Welcome to the Funeral Channel podcast, or as we usually call it, the deep dive.
Great to be here.
I think for most of us, when we picture the end of a life, we are picturing a scene from a movie. You know the one.
Oh, I know it well.
The hospital monitor is beeping rhythmically, beep, beep, beep. Everyone is gathered around, holding their breath, and then suddenly the line goes flat.
That high-pitched tone.
Exactly.
Right.
That continuous high-pitched tone. The doctor looks at their watch, all solemn and precise, and says, time of death, 11.02. It's a switch. You're on, and then click, you're off.
It is a very dramatic, clean image, isn't it? It gives you a lot of narrative closure.
Right. It's neat.
We like to think of it that way because it makes death a singular event, a moment in time. But if we are really going to look at the sources we have today, and we have a massive stack here, everything from palliative care guides, from Agape Hospice in Gilchrist to forensic pathology texts, and even some really mind-bending papers on gene expression, what we find is that death is almost never a switch.
So the movie version is basically wrong.
It's a massive oversimplification. I mean, it's not wrong in the sense that a moment is declared, but biologically, death is not an event.
Okay.
It is a process, a transition. It's this gradual dismantling where systems fail in a very specific, often predictable sequence. And frankly, a lot of the fear we have around death comes from that switch mentality, the idea of an instant chaotic plunge into the dark.
The suddenness of it.
Exactly. But when you look at the biology, as we're going to do today, you see that the body actually knows exactly how to do this. It has a program for shutting down, just as it had a program for growing up.
That is the mission for this deep dive, then. We are going to strip away the feel of the unknown by looking strictly at the biology.
That's the plan.
We're going to walk through the timeline of the end of life from months before it happens through the active dying phase. And then, and this is where it gets really wild, we're going to look at what happens to the body after the heart stops.
Because, spoiler alert, the cells don't just stop working immediately.
Not even close, from what I've read.
They definitely do not. We're going to talk about everything from the death rattle, which is a terrible name for a harmless physiological event, to the complex logistics of organ donation, and finally, to something called the thanatotranscriptome.
Which sounds like a sci-fi movie title. I'm not even sure I said that right.
You did, and it does, but it's actually the study of zombie genes that, they appear to turn on after you die.
Seriously.
Seriously. But before we get to the zombie genes, we should probably mention that while we are exploring the biology, the logistics are real too.
Right.
For those navigating this, there are resources available at the funeral program site regarding funeral planning. Not in a sales way, but just practical guides to help get things in order.
Which is so important because, as we'll see, the biological reality is complex enough without having all the paperwork and arrangements piling up.
It takes a layer of stress off, for sure.
Exactly. So let's start at the approach, the beginning of the end. We have these guides from Agape Hospice in Gilchrist that outline a timeline. And they emphasize that for a natural death, meaning a gradual decline from age or illness, the process starts months out.
Right. And months is a loose term. It's not a fixed schedule, but biologically, the body enters what I like to call conservation mode. Think about your phone.
Okay, I know where you're going with this. When it hits 10% battery.
Exactly. It asks if you want to enter low power mode. The screen dims, the background app refresh turns off, it stops checking for email every 5 seconds, it sheds all non-essential tasks.
And the body does that too.
The body does the exact same thing. It realizes it has limited energy reserves. It can't keep all the apps running at full power anymore.
So what does that look like in a person? What are the first apps to get shut down?
The first thing to go is usually social engagement. It's one of the most energy-intensive things we do. You see a withdrawal. The person stops socializing as much. They become, well, introspective.
They sleep more.
Significantly more. Increased sleep and decreased desire to talk or interact.
And I think for families, that's often the first painful moment.
Yeah.
You feel like they're rejecting you. Grandma doesn't want to see the grandkids, or she's just staring out the window and not engaging in the conversation.
It feels incredibly personal, but biologically, it's purely practical. Socializing takes a tremendous amount of metabolic energy.
I wouldn't have thought of it that way.
Think about what we are doing right now. Processing language, reading facial cues, regulating our emotional responses, projecting our voices. That is expensive, biologically speaking.
It burns calories.
It burns glucose, a lot of it. So the body cuts that expenditure first. It's not a rejection of love. It's a preservation of energy for the vital organs, the heart and the lungs.
So they were retreating into themselves to keep the engine running just a little longer.
They are. It's an internal reprioritization. And as we move from months to weeks, the physical low power mode intensifies. You see changes in appetite. This is a big one in the palliative care literature.
I can imagine. The family often panics because the loved one stops eating.
Well, sure, food is love. Especially in certain cultures, we want to nourish them. Our deepest instinct is to feed the people we care for.
And we worry they're starving to death.
That is a very common and understandable fear, but the sources are very clear on this. They are not starving in the way you or I would feel starvation. When the body is shutting down, the digestive system is one of the first major systems to go offline.
Why is that? Is it just not essential anymore?
It's because digestion is hard work. Breaking down a steak dinner requires acid production, muscular contractions in the stomach and intestines, enzyme secretion from the pancreas.
There's a whole process.
It takes a lot of energy to process calories. If you force food on a dying person,
You're actually causing distress.
you are. You're giving the body a job it can no longer perform. It can cause bloating, nausea, vomiting, and even aspiration where food gets into the lungs, which is very dangerous.
So trying to help can actually hurt.
In this case, yes. But here's the fascinating biological twist. When the body stops receiving food, it shifts its metabolism. It goes into ketosis.
Like the diet everyone is on.
Similar mechanism, but the outcome is different here. In this context, the buildup of ketones in the blood actually produces a natural, mild euphoria and sedation.
Wow.
It acts as an anesthetic. So by not eating, the body is actually helping to numb its own discomfort. It's a built-in mercy.
That is incredible. So the starvation is actually part of the body's own pain management system.
Precisely. It's a protective mechanism. It's the body taking care of itself at the very end.
Okay, so we have the social withdrawal, the decreased appetite. Moving into that weeks before timeline, there's something mentioned in the Gilchrist guide called terminal restlessness. That sounds distressing.
It can be. It can be very distressing for the family to watch. It's also called terminal agitation.
What does it look like?
You might see the person picking up their sheets, trying to climb out of bed, fidgeting constantly, or just acting incredibly anxious or confused.
Is that fear? Are they scared what's coming? Is it a psychological reaction?
It's so easy to interpret it that way as a psychological struggle. But often the cause is, again, biological.
Not emotional.
Not primarily. It's frequently due to cerebral hypoxia, which is just a way of saying there's not enough oxygen getting to the higher functions of the brain. Or it can be metabolic shifts, like the kidneys are slowing down and toxins that would normally be filtered out are building up in the blood. It's a chemical imbalance manifesting as physical restlessness.
So it's not necessarily an emotional state of terror. It's a physiological state of oxygen deprivation or toxicity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't assume they are fighting death psychologically. It's a symptom, like a fever is a symptom. It can be treated with oxygen or mild sedatives, but it's part of the organ failure process.
And what about the visions? This is something you hear about a lot, the I saw my mother moments.
This is one of the most consistent features across cultures and across centuries. The sources mention that people will often speak to deceased loved ones or talk about going home or that they are preparing for a trip.
Palliative care nurses see this all the time, right?
All the time. And the medical advice, interestingly, is don't correct them, don't argue.
Don't say, no, mom isn't here. She passed away years ago.
Right, because this isn't a drug-induced hallucination, which is usually scary. You know, bugs on the wall, monsters, that sort of thing. These visions are almost always described as comforting.
Why do they happen? Do we know?
Well, neurologically, we could say it's memory centers firing as the brain chemistry changes and oxygen levels drop. But functionally, it serves to ease the transition.
So it doesn't matter what the cause is. The effect is positive.
The effect is that the patient feels guided. They feel like someone is waiting for them. It reduces anxiety. Whether you view that as spiritual or neurological, the result is the same.
It's like the brain is building a bridge for itself.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Yes.
Okay, so we've gone through the months and weeks. This all feels very gradual. Now we get to the phase called active dying. The sources say this lasts a few hours to maybe 3 days. This is the final transition.
Yes. This is when the systems really begin to fail in a cascade. And the symptoms here are the ones that are often the most frightening for families to watch because they're so physical and
Well, these
audible.
breathing changes seem to be the most prominent. I've heard of Cheyne-Stokes breathing. Can you unpack that?
Cheyne-Stokes is a very specific and, for an observer, a very alarming pattern.
Okay.
The person will take several rapid, shallow breaths, getting
Yeah.
faster and faster, and then nothing. They start breathing completely. Complete cessation for 5, 10, maybe even 40 seconds. It's called apnea. And the family is sitting there, holding their breath, thinking, is this it? Is this the last one?
And then suddenly the person gasps again.
Exactly. And the whole cycle starts over. It's a roller coaster for the people in the room.
What's happening biologically to cause that pattern?
It's that the brainstem, which is the body's autopilot for breathing, is losing its sensitivity to carbon dioxide.
I see.
Normally, if your CO2 goes up even a tiny bit, your brainstem screams, breathe. It's a very tight feedback loop. In active dying, that sensor is failing. It doesn't notice the CO2 rising until it's at a critical level.
And that's what triggers a gasp.
It waits until the alarm is screamingly loud to trigger a breath. Hence the long pause and then the sudden flurry of breaths to try and catch up. The regulator is breaking down.
And then there's the sound. The death rattle.
A truly unfortunate term. It sounds like something out of a gothic horror movie.
It does. It sounds painful, like they are choking.
It sounds exactly like they are choking, but they aren't. And the sources are so emphatic about this. The person is not in distress.
So what is it?
The death rattle is simply caused by a buildup of saliva and mucus in the back of the throat. When we are healthy, we swallow dozens of times an hour automatically. We don't even think about it. But when a person is deeply unconscious and actively dying, that swallow reflex is gone. So the fluid just sits there.
And as the air moves over it.
It vibrates. It's basic fluid dynamics. It's like blowing air through a straw into a drink. It sounds bubbly or rattling. To us, it sounds like they are drowning, but they aren't. They are in a coma-like state, unaware, and simply breathing past the fluid.
Can it be treated?
Yes, it can be managed by repositioning the patient onto their side to let gravity help, or with medication to dry up secretions. But the key takeaway is that it does not indicate suffering.
That is really good to know, because if you don't know that, you feel absolutely helpless.
What about the visual signs? We talked about the skin changing color.
Yes, this is called modeling. You'll usually see it start on the knees, the feet, the hands. It looks like a purple or bluish, blotchy, web-like pattern under the skin.
And this is the circulation pulling back.
Correct. The heart is getting weaker, the blood pressure is dropping, it can't pump blood all the way to the periphery anymore, so the body prioritizes.
Back to that conservation mode. Exactly. It says, I don't need the toes, I don't need the knees right now, I need to keep blood flowing to the heart and the brain. So the blood retreats to the core of the body, the extremities get cold to the touch, and they get that mottled look because the blood is stagnating in the small vessels.
There was one other sign in the forensic text that I hadn't heard of before. The Kevorkian sign.
Ah, yes. Not to be confused with the man himself, this is a clinical sign.
Right.
It's a sign visible in the eye. It's also known as retinal vascular segmentation. Basically, if you look into the back of the eye with an ophthalmoscope, you can see the blood vessels on the retina.
Okay.
Normally, they look like continuous red lines. But as circulation stops, as the heart fails, the column of blood in those tiny vessels breaks up.
To clumps.
Exactly. It stops looking like a continuous red line and starts looking like a dashed line, like boxcars on a train track. It's one of the earliest, most reliable signs for a clinician that the heart has actually ceased functioning.
So we reached the moment of cessation, the clinical definition of death.
Right. And traditionally, this was easy. No pulse, no breath, no reflexes. The heart stops, the lungs stop, the brain stops. Simple.
But technology has made it not so simple.
Technology, specifically the mechanical ventilator, has complicated it significantly. And this brings us to a really important distinction found in our sources from LifeSource and the medical texts: the difference between brain death and circulatory death.
This is crucial, especially when it comes to organ donation. So let's break it down. Brain death is death.
Legally.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. Let's be very clear. Brain death is death.
Mm-hmm.
Legally and medically in all 50 states and most of the world. It means the irreversible cessation of all brain function, including the brainstem, not a coma, not a vegetative state. The brain is gone.
But the heart can still be beating. The chest can be moving up and down.
Only if a machine is making it happen. See, the heart has its own internal pacemaker. It's an amazing organ. As long as it gets oxygen, it can pump. Yep. It doesn't need the brain to tell it to beat every single time.
Nice. So a ventilator can shove air into the lungs. That oxygenates the blood, and the heart will keep pumping that oxygenated blood. The skin stays warm, The chest rises and falls.
But the person is gone.
The person is gone. The brain is no longer functioning and has no capacity to ever function again. If you scan the brain, there is no blood flow. It is, for all intents and purposes, a hollow shell being artificially oxygenated.
That must be devastatingly confusing for a family.
It is one of the hardest things to comprehend. You're looking at your loved one and they look like they're sleeping, but they are dead. And for organ donation, this state is what allows for the most organs to be transplanted: heart, lungs, kidneys, because they're being kept perfectly oxygenated right up until the moment of recovery.
So that's brain death. And then there's DCD donation after circulatory death.
Right. This is for a patient who isn't brain dead. Maybe they have a devastating brain injury, but some brainstem function remains. But survival is impossible. There's no hope for a meaningful recovery.
So the family makes a decision.
The family makes the decision to withdraw life support. They take the breathing tube out, and then they wait for the heart to stop naturally.
And there's a time limit there, isn't there, for the organs to be viable?
There is. This is the ischemic window. Ischemia means lack of blood flow. Once the heart stops, or even just when the blood pressure drops too low, organs start dying very, very fast because they aren't getting oxygen.
So it's a race against the clock.
It is. The liver, the kidneys, they can only survive a short time without blood flow. So if the patient doesn't pass away within a specific window, usually an hour or two after support is withdrawn, donation might not be possible because the organs have suffered too much damage.
It's a logistical high-wire act. Incredibly emotional and complex.
It truly is. It requires the family to say goodbye, the medical team to withdraw support, and then a very respectful wait to see if the patient passes within the time frame that allows their final gift to be used.
It's intense. And before we move on to what happens after death, the post-mortem stuff, I want to circle back to what we mentioned at the top. For anyone listening who is actually navigating this right now or planning for it, the biology is one thing, but the planning is another. That's why we mentioned the funeral program site earlier. Having those resources on funeral planning can just take one layer of stress off the table when you're dealing with all this.
Absolutely. The more you understand the process, both the biological and the logistical, the less scary and overwhelming it becomes.
Okay, so the person has died. The heart has stopped. The brain has stopped. The doctor has called the time. You'd think the story ends there.
But biologically, the party is just getting started.
This is where we meet the Mortis brothers. I love this mnemonic from the study.com source. Pal, Al, Rig, and Liv.
It sounds like a bad barbershop quartet. Or maybe a law firm you definitely shouldn't hire.
It does. Let's introduce them one by one. First up is Pal.
Palamortis.
Pallor Mortis. This happens almost instantly, within about 15 to 25 minutes. It's simply paleness.
Why?
The heart stops pumping, so the capillary circulation in the skin fails. Gravity pulls the blood away from the surface into the deeper veins. So the person looks ashen or waxy.
Right. That glow of life, that rosy complexion, is literally blood in your capillaries. When the pump stops, the glow fades. Simple as that.
Okay, that's Pal. Next in the quartet is Al. Algor Mortis.
Algol means cold. This is the cooling of the body. We are metabolic engines. We are constantly burning fuel to stay at a cozy 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
We're warm-blooded.
Exactly. When the engine cuts, the heat production stops. The body then begins to equilibrate with the ambient temperature of the room.
And forensic pathologists use this to help determine the time of death, right?
Gigyu, it's a classic tool. The general rule of thumb is that the body loses about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit per hour. But, and this is a big but, Al is a very unreliable brother.
Why?
Just too many variables. If you die in a snowbank, you cool down much faster. If you die in a sauna, you might not cool down at all for a while.
What you're wearing, body fat.
If you had a raging fever from sepsis when you died, you start from a higher temperature. If you're wearing a heavy coat, that's insulation. So forensic scientists have to do a lot of math and take a lot of factors into account to use Algor Mortis with any accuracy.
Then comes the famous one, the one everyone's heard of, Rig. Rigor mortis. The stiffening. Now, I always thought this was permanent, like the body was drying out or something.
The very common misconception, it's not permanent at all, it's temporary. And the chemistry here is just fascinating.
Okay, lay it on me.
To understand rigor, you have to understand how muscles work. To contract a muscle, your cells release calcium. That calcium allows two protein filaments, actin and myosin, to grab onto each other and pull. That's the squeeze.
Right.
But to get them to let go to relax the muscle, you have to spend energy. You need a specific molecule called ATP, adenosine triphosphate.
Wait, you need energy to relax? That seems backward.
It does, but it's true. Think of it like a latch on a gate. The muscle fibers latch onto each other to contract. To unlatch them, you have to spend an ATP molecule. It's like putting a coin in a slot to unlock the gate so it can swing open again.
So when you die,
You stop making ATP, the cellular factories shut down, but as the cell membranes break down, calcium floods out of its storage units.
so the muscles contract.
The muscles contract, they all latch on, but there is no ATP left to pay the toll to unlock them, so they get stuck. They're locked in a contracted state.
And that's the stiffness.
That's rigor mortis. It usually starts in the small muscles, the face, the jaw, the fingers, around 2 to 3 hours after death. It spreads to the whole body, peaking around 12 to 24 hours.
But you said it's temporary.
It is, because as decomposition starts to set in, those protein filaments, the actin and myosin themselves, start to break down. The latch itself dissolves and the body becomes flaccid again. Rigor usually leaves after about 36 to 48 hours.
And finally, the last brother, live. Livor mortis.
Livor mortis. Liver means bluish color. This one is all about gravity. Once the heart stops, the blood is just a liquid in a container, which is the body. It obeys gravity and settles to the lowest point. If you die lying on your back, the blood pools in your back, your buttocks, the back of your legs.
And that causes a color change.
A deep reddish-purple discoloration. But here's the CSI part of it. The parts of the body that are pressing firmly against the floor or the bed remain white.
Why is that?
The pressure of the body's weight squeezes the capillaries shut in those areas so the blood can't pool there. This is called contact pallor.
So if you find a body and it's lying on its stomach,
But the purple pooling, the livor mortis, is on the back.
then the body was moved.
Exactly. The body was moved after livor mortis became fixed, because after a few hours, usually around 8 to 12, that pooling becomes permanent. The red blood cells break down and stain the tissue. So livor mortis is a fantastic clock and a position recorder for forensic investigators.
It's amazing how much the body tells us even after the person is gone. It's like a whole story written there.
It really is. It's a silent witness to its own final moments.
So we've met the Mortis brothers, the immediate large-scale changes. But now we have to go deeper, into the cell itself, because while the organism is dead, the cells didn't get the memo immediately.
No, they did not. This brings us to the first stage of true decomposition, which is called autolysis, which literally means self-digestion.
Self-digestion, that sounds
This can be-
appetizing.
It's messy. See, your cells are full of incredibly powerful digestive enzymes. While you're alive, those enzymes are kept safely locked away in little containment units called lysosomes.
Like little cellular cages.
Exactly. They digest food particles, they recycle old cell parts, but they are kept behind bars. When you die, the cell's machinery fails. The pH changes, the containment units rupture, the enzymes leak out and start eating the very cell that contained them.
So the body literally eats itself from the inside out.
It does, and it starts with the organs that are richest in enzymes. The pancreas is the big one. It's basically a bag of digestive juice designed to break down your dinner. It liquefies very, very quickly.
And then after the self-digestion, we have the bacteria.
Then comes putrefaction. This is the biological takeover. We have trillions of bacteria living in our gut, the microbiome. While we are alive, our immune system keeps them in check. It maintains a truce. It keeps them behind the wall of the gut lining.
But when the immune system shuts down,
The guards go home, the gates are unguarded, and the bacteria, specifically anaerobic species like Clostridium, break out, they breach the wall, they get into the bloodstream and use it like a highway system to spread to the liver, the heart, the brain, everywhere.
and this happens fast.
The research on what's called the Thanaton microbiome, the microbiome of death, shows they can reach the liver within about 20 hours and can colonize the entire body within 58 hours.
Wow.
And as they consume the body's tissues, their metabolism produces gas, methane, hydrogen sulfide, other compounds.
Which causes the bloating we associate with decomposition.
Exactly. Bloating and the very specific smell. That scent of death is largely due to two chemicals they produce, putrescine and cadaverine.
Aptly named.
Very. But this gas buildup is what makes the body swell, and it's a crucial part of the recycling process. It breaks the body down so it can return to the ecosystem.
Now, you mentioned something earlier that I'm still stuck on, the thanatotranscriptome. We've talked about physical breakdown, but you said there is genetic activity.
This is one of the most surprising and profound discoveries in this field in recent years. You'd assume that when an organism dies, gene expression, the process of DNA sending out instructions to make proteins, would just stop. Silence.
Right. The power goes out, the signal stops.
But that's not what happens. Research, first on zebrafish and mice, and now confirmed in human tissues, shows that there is a thanatotranscriptome, a death transcriptome. Hundreds, even thousands of genes actually spike in activity after death.
They turn on after the person is dead.
They turn on, or their activity dramatically increases. Some of them peak 24, even 48 hours post-mortem.
What on earth are they trying to do?
They are trying to survive. The individual cells don't know the whole organism is dead. They just know their local environment has gone catastrophic.
Hey, there's no oxygen. Hey, the pH is wrong.
Hey, it's getting hot from inflammation. So they switch on stress response genes, inflammation genes, genes associated with cell growth and cancer. They are fighting a desperate, futile battle for survival that is already lost on a massive scale.
That is heartbreakingly tenacious. It's like the lights are still on in some of the rooms of the house, even though the whole block is dark.
It is. And here's the weirdest part. Some of the genes that turn on are developmental genes, the same genes that were active when you were an embryo in the womb.
Wait, why? How is that even possible?
The best theory is that as the cell structure breaks down, the chromatin, which is the tight packaging that keeps your DNA organized and certain genes silenced, starts to unravel. It opens up. And these ancient early life genes, which have been silenced for decades, suddenly wake up and are expressed. It's like the cell is trying to revert to a primal, self-sufficient state to save itself.
So in the silence of death, there is this molecular scream of life trying to persist.
The unwinding of the clock is what some scientists call it. And it really does challenge our definition of gone. If your genes are still expressing instructions 2 days after your heart stops, are you completely biologically inert? Not really.
That is.
Oh.
Wow. I'm going to need a second to process that. That's a huge idea.
It's heavy stuff. It blurs the lines.
It does. But it also connects back perfectly to what we said at the start. Death isn't a switch. It's a long tail. A very, very long tail.
A long, slow fade at every level, from the social to the cellular.
Before we wrap up, we have to talk about the environment.
Yeah.
Because all of this biological activity, the bacteria, the autolysis, it depends heavily on where the body is. This is the field of taphonomy.
Taphonomy, right. The laws of burial, essentially. And the big rule of thumb here is Casper's law.
Casper, like the friendly ghost.
Maybe named after the German forensic scientist, but it's very easy to remember that way. Casper's law is the rule of 1.2.8.
1.2.8. Break that down for me.
It's about the relative speed of decomposition. A body decomposes at a baseline speed in the open air. Let's call that speed 1. If you submerge that same body in water, it will decompose about half as fast, so a ratio of 2.
So 1 week in the air is like 2 weeks in the water.
Roughly, yes. And the 8.
That must be buried.
Earth, soil. 1 week in the air is equivalent to about 8 weeks buried in soil. The soil is cold, it has less oxygen, it limits insect access, it preserves the body much, much longer.
And sometimes the environment does something really strange. I read about this. It can turn the body into soap.
Adipocere, grave wax. Yes, this is a fascinating chemical process. If the environment is wet, alkaline, and anaerobic, so no oxygen, think a peat bog or a sealed casket in wet ground, the body fat doesn't just break down, it undergoes saponification.
Saponification, like
Yeah.
making soap.
It literally turns into a waxy, soapy substance. The body's own fat becomes a natural preservative.
And it preserves the body,
Yeah.
the form of it.
Remarkably well. There are cases of bodies found in lakes or wet graves that are decades, even centuries old. But the adipocere has preserved their physical form, even their facial features, almost perfectly. It's eerie, but from a chemical standpoint, it's just a reaction. Fat plus water plus a base equals soap.
It's amazing. We've gone from social withdrawal and a dying person not feeling hunger all the way to the death rattle, to rigor mortis, to the zombie genes, and finally to grave wax.
It's quite a biological journey.
It is. And I want to bring it back to the human element for a second as we close out. We talked a lot about the how, but the why we're doing this deep dive is to try and make it less scary.
That's right, because knowledge is the antidote to fear.
When you hear the death rattle, if you don't know what it is, it sounds like your loved one is choking in agony.
Right.
But now we know. It's just fluid physics. It does not signify pain.
Exactly. When you see them stop eating, your first instinct is guilt. You feel like you're letting them starve. But knowing about ketosis, knowing that the body is actually anesthetizing itself, that changes the entire experience for the family.
It gives you permission to stop fighting the process.
It gives you permission to stop fighting and just be present, to trust that the body knows what it's doing.
The body knows how to die.
It does. It is a biological program that has been refined for millions of years. It shuts down sequentially, it protects the consciousness as it fades, and it recycles the materials afterwards. It is, in its own way, a very ordered and elegant system.
And even after the end, there's that cellular afterlife, that thanatotranscriptum. It
Oh.
really makes you question where the line actually is.
It raises a profound question, doesn't it? If our cells are still fighting to survive, if our genes are still shouting instructions into the void 48 hours later, are we ever really just off? The line between life and death is much blurrier biologically than our legal or social definitions allow.
Something to mull over for sure.
Indeed.
And again, if you are in the midst of this planning, do check out those resources we mentioned. The funeral program site for the logistics, because the paperwork is real,
Yeah.
and the hospice guides from Gilchrist and Agape for the caretaking. Knowledge is power, but it's also comfort.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us into the biological journey of the end. It's a heavy topic, but hopefully a little less mysterious now.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for listening.
See you next time.